Okay.
So
Welcome
obviously
to
not so
Colloquium
well.
for the Graduate School of Education in the Sesame program. For our first talk this year, we're lucky enough to have two speakers. Before we get started, I want to remind you, if you're enrolled, please sign in so that I know that you're here. And if you're not enrolled, please also sign in, because your name on the list helps Kate provide the refreshments for us that we enjoy every week. So thank you, Kate. Many of the speakers in this series have been suggested by students and faculty, and if there's somebody nearby that you'd like invited, please let me know. It's a great way for everyone in our extended community to get to know each other, to expand our intellectual horizons, and to open up productive conversations. Today's talk should be a great example. To introduce our speakers today, we have David Stern.
Thank you, Lloyd, and thank you, Kate, if you're still here, but not. Please convey my thanks again to Kate, and thank you all for coming. I'm a professor emeritus from home, so I'm very happy that you're hosting us here in the Sesame CD Colloquium. Some of what we say will have some particular relevance to science and math education, but it's really going to deal more with the whole issue of high school restructuring and a project that we've had for 20 years now with no support from the university, clawing away to get funding from foundations and other donors to keep it going. And I'm going to let the presenters tell you about the mission of that group, but we combine research and support for research-based practice, and we also, our policy gadflies along the way, pushing the vision that this project is founded on. Our two presenters are the new executive director of the group, which we call Chasm. Theresa McEwen is a former high school principal for a number of years in more than one high school, who knows very well the challenges of making high school real and fair for students and providing options for after high school. She also worked most recently for Sacramento City Unified School District, where she was the director of high school restructuring for that district. The other presenter is Annie Johnston, a graduate of our Principal Leadership Program and of our Elite Doctoral Program, and before that, a teacher of social studies and history, and leader of an academy at Berkeley High School that was for a long time called the Community Partnerships Academy. So also knows very well and directly the challenges of making high school meaningful and productive for high school students. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Okay. Well, thank you, David, and thank you all for coming this afternoon. It's a delight to be here. And while David says I'm the new executive director, I have been here on campus for about a year, and my first college experience. So a year under my belt now, and I feel like students returning to high school that sophomore year, there's something about the sophomore year that is empowering. So we're here today to talk a little bit about the or and the and. And I like to joke with people to say, you know, when I was a high school principal, and as David said, I spent 9 years as a high school principal in 2 different high schools here in the East Bay. And I decided at one point I was going to write a book, which I'm not going to write, but I will willingly share this title with anybody. The title of my book was going to be From Or to And, Stories of Transformation or Story of Transformation in Urban Education. And what does it look like in high schools, and what does it take for the young people in high schools, but also the teachers, the mentors, the counselors that guide them along the way to create a learning environment in which all students will graduate ready for success in post-secondary learning, ready for success in career, ready for success in community, civic, and family engagement. So moving from the sort and select, where some get one treatment and some get another treatment, to all students are empowered and all students are ready to be successful in adult life. So we will talk a little bit more about that today. Also, as David said, what is this thing called Chasm? We would like to share with you a little bit about our organization and resources that we have, and especially for those of you entering the profession, a number of resources that we have, all free resources that are available online that will help you in your career and help you as you enter the workforce. Those of you in the workforce, as you're working in your classrooms day in and day out, to make sure that you can provide lessons, you can provide learning environments with the rigor, the high-level challenges that we want for all young people. We want to give you a little bit of the story of our history and our background, some of our significant accomplishments, and then tell you about our current work and invite you to join us, either physically or in spirit. Join us on this journey and continue to work with us as we work together as educators to make sure that all students have every opportunity to graduate ready to pursue their dreams. So if we look at a little bit of a history lesson moving from or to and, we go back almost 100 years with this Smith Hughes Act, which gave states money for vocational education and was really one of the first times as public high schools were becoming the norm and becoming popular and in communities across our nation, was really looking at that there was this idea that some students should be ready for the academic rigors of post-secondary and some students would go straight to the workplace. And the impact that it had in the high school space and that people were concerned about was that it would separate high school education into tracks, and that the students that were more ready or more able or more capable would have a more academic track, would have more abstract learning opportunities, and the students that weren't quite ready would go off into a career. And really that segregation and separation into college-bound and not college-bound. And some of you in your experiences in high school may have even experienced that, where somebody said, well, you need to take this college prep class, or you need to take this AP class because you're college-bound. We want you to be competitive and ready for post-secondary. So a lot of times people in the high school space saw that that was their job, counselors and teachers very well-meaning, saying, go this track, go that track. In 1960, so in the early 1960s, there was a master plan for higher education in California. And while the focus of that was looking at the UCs, the CSUs, and the community colleges working together and identifying where they would teach and how they would prepare young people, the next generation, for full participation, what message it gave to the high schools is to further reinforce that sort and select mentality, that yes, you're ready, the top 3%, 5%, you're ready for UC, you're ready for CSU, you're ready for community college, or you're ready for the workforce out of high school. And at that time in the 1960s, still young people could leave high school with a diploma and enter the workforce and earn a living wage and be ready to fully participate in adult life. But that sort and select mentality, where that really was the job of the high school, and the high schools, and having lived and worked in high schools for a long time, really took seriously that charge of making sure that you identified those right students that were going to be successful at the University of California or at the CSUs, or ready for success in community college, ready to enter the trades, ready to go to military, and really gave those messages loud and clear to young people. And what we saw often, and you have seen, is not only was that separation by perceived ability or achievement, but it often cut across racial and gender lines, and separating students and placing students as early as 5th, 6th, 7th grade into tracks that would track them in a certain way, and regardless of what they wanted or what they thought they could do or their families wanted them to do, that they were on this certain track. In the 1980s, people began to question this mentality, so it's something we've been looking at for the last 20, 30 years. Is sort and select, is the track, is this what we want to do? Vocational ed began to evolve from being apart and separate and in the back, and even if you look at how high schools were built in the 40s and 50s and 60s, where academic classes were in front and the shop classes were at the back of the school, or sometimes even off campus, to beginning to have a conversation about what would it look like, what does it look like when college and career is combined, when the CTE moves into the front of the school, into the center of a classroom, into the center of a program of study, and that meaningful relevance is afforded to our young people. In the late 1980s, career academies began to become available in the state of California and across the nation, looking at identifying careers that young people might want to enter in their future, and opportunities to combine the CTE, the academics, with careers, and really beginning that conversation about college and career, and that we're preparing young people for post-secondary learning, as well as preparing young people for careers, and opportunities for young people to begin to make those choices, where it wasn't the tracking of old, where because you had a certain grade in 5th grade, or because you spoke a certain language at home, that you were in a track and that you would never be able to leave that track. We have been working, and we'll talk a little bit more about Chasm, but really supporting schools. When you look at all the structures that are in a school, the teacher credentialing, the 6-period day structure, the requirements for high school graduation, they're really sort into college or career, and really looking at the and. And the last few years, we feel, those of us working in the field, has been a very exciting time in education, and sometimes I think of the joke that I would tell teachers sometimes the first day of school, as a high school principal, that there's this ancient Chinese curse about, may you live in interesting times. And I feel like right now we are living in very interesting times in the state of California when it comes to K-12, and in particular high school education, looking at the calls from the Common Core state standards, really opportunities to prepare all students for college and career, looking at the messages we're getting from the federal government when our president stands up and says we want all young people to have post-secondary education, all young people prepared, so that all young people can make choices and make decisions about college and career. And we are still in a place of sort and select, and not to say at all that all of our schools are moving towards all young people graduating ready for college and all young people graduating ready for career, but we have seen significant growth in the last number of years. And last school year, the California Partnership Academies, which we'll talk about a little more later, a model of career and college academies, are currently enrolling approximately 50,000 students. National Academy Foundation, which is a national effort to support college and career readies, strong support from the workforce. In the state of California, approximately 20,000 students enrolled in NAF academies, and Link Learning, which is an approach to college and career readiness that also works with the state of California, with the California Partnership Academies and the NAF academies. But that Link Learning currently has approximately 23,000 students in certified Link Learning pathways in the state of California. So opportunities we're seeing where there are opportunities for up to 100,000 students currently in high school in the state of California to have an opportunity where they will graduate from high school ready for college, ready for career. We'll talk a little bit later, but right now the State Board of Education is really in an exciting and critical place, looking at the accountability measures that will be in place. And I was just talking to some colleagues here saying it will probably take us a couple of years to get these measures in place, but once they're in place, hopefully staying for this next generation to say, what is it that we require, that we demand, we as citizens of this great state of California want for our young people when they graduate from high school, to demonstrate that they are ready for post-secondary learning. And when we say college, we always mean and want to say post-secondary learning. It just doesn't quite roll off the tongue the same way that college and career. But when we say college ready for post-secondary learning, be it in the classroom, be it in an apprenticeship program, be it in the military, be it in a workforce program, but learning beyond high school, because most of us know and believe in our hearts and see the wage and number statistics that it does take more in this day and age than a high school diploma to make a living wage in the state of California. So the State Board of Education is grappling right now with what will those accountability measures look like. What can we hold all students before they receive a diploma from their high school? What can we hold them accountable for to say that we are ready for post-secondary learning, we are ready for career and entry into a career of choice? And so approximately 20 years ago, after working in the field and supporting high schools across the state, and starting with along the peninsula with career academies, came to the University of Berkeley and asked professors here, and notably David Stern, who was here at the time, can you help us? We want to move from college or career. We really want to look at the infrastructure. We want to look at what we're doing in our schools. Can you help us? Can you provide guidance? Can you provide support? Can you share the research with us that will help us make decisions day in and day out about how we can restructure, redo, reinvent our high school? And that old thing of, while the plane is flying, you have to reinvent the plane while the plane is flying. But how can you do this and help us? And so approximately 20 years ago, the Chasm was born. And our vision for those of us involved in Chasm today is a world where post-secondary education opens a full range of where secondary education opens a full range of post-secondary educational and employment options for every student. And when we say every, we really work hard, strive hard, work long hours to make sure that every student is included and is involved and does have opportunities. We're looking at students who speak languages in addition to English at home. We're looking at students who have special needs. We're looking at students who are gifted and talented and have needs in certain areas and maybe need extra help in other areas. We're looking at students who are working and living in group homes, or students who are incarcerated. How can we help all students be ready so that they can realize their full potential upon graduation from high school? And then our mission is to build the capacity of secondary education and secondary educators and all of you involved in secondary education to enact research-based strategies for student success, and for student success in post-secondary, for student success in career, and for student success in community and civic life. We collect and disseminate evidence on student outcomes and exemplary practices, and we'll share a little bit more about that with you later. And we promote and also advocate for policies to make secondary education more real, and our leader, my mentor, talks about making it real and fair for students, for all students in secondary education. And I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague Annie Johnston, who will talk a little bit more about the origins of Chasm and how we got to where we are today.
So the academy idea, this college and career small learning community where teachers collaborate in an interdisciplinary fashion to make the content of their academic subjects real and give it a context for students to learn in. Those academies first started in Philadelphia. They spread to New York and then to California. And the late 80s is when California developed the legislation that funded the California Partnership Academies, and one of our previous directors, now retired, was a part of crafting that legislation. 1990 was when I entered teaching. And I started in an academy that had just started. So I spent 22 years from the early days of a pathway as a teacher in that academy, and then eventually as a lead teacher in that academy. And my experience of learning to teach was significantly different from most of my colleagues because I had that collaborative context. The students in our pathway had to, at that point in time, 90% of them had to be at-risk students. So we would go to all of the 9th grade classrooms and ask for who was it that obviously could have been doing better but wasn't. They really had the capacity, but for whatever reasons were not being able to be successful. School wasn't serving them well. And those were the people we pursued and recruited into our pathways. The team of teachers that did that had the advantage of a connection to the California Partnership Academies out of the California Department of Education, where people had put together the research about what kinds of structures need to be in place. So we were led through the process, and the book that's listed here, the Career Academies by David Stern, Marilyn Raby, who is also here, she's a professor here, right?
No,
she
but
was
she did work on the
administrator in the Bay Area, and Charlie Dayton, who helped to write that legislation. That book really provided a model, and so did the later resources that Chasm developed for our pathway. It kept us figuring out how to do this work. Chasm itself was founded in 1997. I think I came into teaching in 1990, and fairly soon after that, my students started doing internships out including with what was then the or just before then, what was the Center for Vocational,
Yep. Research and vocation.
thank you, Center for Research in Vocational Education. But getting kids into the field and getting them to understand that what they were learning in the classroom had real hands-on applications, and having that experience of having to act like professionals, having to see how professionals act, having to be held to some standards around that, and to be able to aim for that, and to see themselves as possibly playing those roles really made a difference for our students. Since then, Chasm has grown, has brought in well over $1 million a year in grants and contracts from foundations and government agencies. We've received no support from the University of California other than that we have, David's professorial office down the hall.
And all of you here today.
and we've had the access to the research, the resources, the approach that says we really need to be able to understand why we're doing what we're doing, and not just go from the seat of our pants or what we think is best. So that California Partnership Model, Academy Model, is essentially a 3-year program, grades 10 through 12. It's a school within the school. So it started as an alternative within the school. And that meant that there was some room, some flexibility for people to do something different. It incorporates the integration of academics and career technical education. There has to be a sequence of career technical courses that build on each other, but that the academic courses connect to and can use the applications from in teaching the key academic concepts. And the business partnerships that are on the advisory board are key resources for those teachers. They provide not only the places for the students to go for internships, but also the content for the teachers to figure out how do we apply this in the field. And they come in and they help the students figure out how to do the performance tasks that we give them that are related to that work in the field. And they provide mentors and internships as well. So that's the model. Now, what we've tried to build is many people are trying to put that model into place. And it takes a lot of work because we're trying to scale it up, and it's no longer off in the corner. And the structures of schooling are not set up for us to have everybody working in an interdisciplinary fashion. The classrooms aren't next to each other, the master schedule won't handle it. So many people are trying to figure out how do we wrestle this system into a shape that can support that kind of learning. And so we help those programs, those districts, those pathway leads and teams and consortia, groups of education leaders who are trying to figure out how do we promote this and develop it, to develop pathways in their context, with what they can do in their space, but with some principles. And some of those principles are, you've got to let all kids have access to a college preparatory A through G curriculum. Unless you're going to track them and say that if you come join our pathway, you don't get to go to UC. You can't do that, right? You have to set up your program with the idea in mind that all students should be able to access that.
And you might check to make sure everybody here knows what A to G means. There are some students out of state and out of country.
Raise your hand if you know what A to G is. Okay. So the University of California and the CSU system have a set of courses that are listed alphabetically. A equals English. No, social studies. Social studies. B equals English. C equals math. I don't know why they did that order, but there are a certain number of those that you have to have passed with a C or better to even be eligible to apply. It doesn't mean you get in, it just means you're eligible to apply. So if you're setting up a program in a high school, you want to make sure that you set up your program so that it will provide that opportunity for students. And some of them may blow it and have to take remedial classes in their senior year just to graduate. But you want them to have had the opportunity, and you want to support them to meet that expectation, that standard, as much as you can. So that's a principle that we try to build into the pathways. A second one is that you want to support all students to be able to explore and plan and figure out what their possibilities are, the full range of possibilities for post-secondary. You don't want to presume, just because they say, look, you know, my dad's got this kind of company, I think that's just what I'm going to do. You want them to figure out for themselves, what are they good at, what are the possibilities that opens up, how can they develop that and open those doors. You want to have that sequence, the sequence of CTE courses. You're asking them to choose the pathway based on their interests, hopefully figuring out, you know, that this is something that they would like to be good at or to understand and know better. And so you want them to get the chance to get that concrete knowledge down, some level of, I understand this much about that field.
CTE may not be known.
Career Technical Education, CTE. Career Technical Education. You want to provide supports so that you don't set it up that because a kid has to take an extra class because they're in special ed or they're an English language learner or whatever, that therefore they can't be in your program or they fall behind. Or even kids who do fall behind, you want to still make sure that whatever the things are that are causing that, you have supports in place to help them deal with. And this is a challenge, especially because schools don't really provide those kind of supports naturally. And teachers feel like, look, you know, I can teach the subject. I don't know if I can be the social worker, right? That might be too much. So it's a big challenge that the academies try to provide extra resources and supports to put into place. Then you want to make sure that all students have the ability to access advanced coursework. Because if you have to choose between getting this CAD class and taking an AP computer science class, that's not fair. Because that says that the CAD person is going to be a technical worker and the AP person is going to be a professional and get much more money. It just sets you up. You can't make students make those choices. You have to figure out how to build it in. And then you want to allow all students to access work-based learning opportunities. They have to be able to see, what is this stuff we're learning, how does it connect to the real world? And what is it like being in that? What are the careers? What are the jobs that people do? So that they can discover soon on that if they're going to be really good at healthcare but they can't stay on the side of blood, what are the other opportunities for them to stay in a field that they really care about and still be able to do the thing that's not just the doctor and nurse, the only people that they've ever seen in healthcare, until they've gone out in an internship or a job shadow or something like that. Okay? So those are the key things we try to work with pathways to develop. I'm going to pass it back to Theresa.
Okay.
She's frozen.
I'm frozen. I sat too long, lived enchanted listening to
You rattle on. Oh, you got it.
No, I got it. So, as we were saying, Chasm has been in existence supporting high schools for approximately 20 years, and I wanted to share with you now some of our significant accomplishments, some of the areas that we feel proud and want to continue the work. So as we were saying, the primary model or vehicle that is used in the high school space to enable students to graduate college and career ready are academies or pathways, and they're associated or connected with a career. And the state of California has identified 15 industry sectors, and so generally these pathways are tied to an industry sector: healthcare pathway, an engineering pathway, an arts, media, entertainment pathway. And CASN has supported the growth of California Partnership Academies, which are academies funded by the California State Department of Education, from the original 10 to last year 416 academies, and we continue to advocate for the addition of additional pathways to support college and career readiness. In addition to requests, or in response to requests, in addition to the work we've done in California, CASN has provided on-site support, and that can be coaching, professional development, technical assistance to schools in 20 other states. Upon request from the states and from the national government and the National Coalition of Academies, CASN led the creation creation of national quality standards for career academies. So if you are interested in studying career academies or starting a career academy, there are standards that will help you. What does a quality career academy look like? We were involved in that. We provided guidance for evaluation of career academies by MDRC, and we are in conversation with them about updating this work and providing additional evaluations of the current academies that are in place. We've supported the Linked Learning Initiative in California approximately 7 years ago. The James Irvine Foundation, which is a large foundation in the state of California, provides funding to improve the lives of youth and young people across the state, provided over $100 million over a course of 6 to 7 years to school districts in the state of California, Sac City, where I was working, being one of them, to really look at how can we district-wide support the creation of pathways, the creation of academies. What do district-wide structures need to look like? How do we need to change what we're doing, not just in the classroom, not just at the school level, but at the district level and in the community, in order to support structures and opportunities for all students to graduate ready for college and ready for career. And Chasm played a big part in that. And then we've also collaborated with West Ed in National Science Foundation projects to create Globe Cap. We continue, as Annie was talking about, looking at curriculum. When the students are in pathways or academies, generally a program of study is created so that the students don't necessarily pick all this or select all the classes they're going to take every year, but they take the courses within the academy, and we call that program of study. So we help schools look at what does the program of study look like, what is the most logical sequence of courses for students to take in grades 9, 10, 11, 12. Increasingly, we're looking into the middle school space and what might that middle school space look like, because we would hate for young people to start 9th grade and find out, oh, you can't be in this academy because you didn't take algebra in middle school, as for example. So we really look at that. And as Annie was talking about, we want to make sure that they fulfill the requirements so that students can apply to any public university in the state of California. So we look at completion of the A to G requirements and a CTE sequence. And in order to do that, some of the work that we're doing currently in schools, and Patricia, who's right back there with you, Patricia Clark is working with the State Department of Education, with the Linked Learning Alliance, and with many schools up and down the state of California to look at CTE courses, the career technical education courses, and when and where possible, making sure that those courses are accredited college prep recognition, and in many cases, even honors recognition for courses in the 11th and 12th grade, so that students taking the CTE courses, the career technical courses, can graduate ready for college and have a resume, have a transcript, have an application that is robust as students who take AP courses. We also look at master scheduling. In a couple of minutes, Annie will walk you through our website. We've done a lot of work with master scheduling and supporting folks, primarily assistant principals in schools and the district office personnel who support them in creation of master schedules that work, that allow students to take all the classes they need to graduate college and career ready. Many times in high school still, you're on the college track or you're on the career track, the voc ed track, and you might not take the same classes at the same classes. So often the classes that students need to graduate college and career ready are offered at the same time. So really looking strategically at that master schedule to make sure that students have the opportunity to take the courses, and that the students don't have to make choices and say, well, if I want to stay in this academy, then that means I can't be in band, or I can't be on the football team, or I can't do this other project over here that I want to. And while at times students in high school, just like all of us, we will need to make choices in life, but really making sure as much as possible that that master schedule is created in a way that students have an abundance and a variety of courses that they can take. We've done work, and Annie was instrumental in a teacher leadership guide, and really looking at teachers in the classrooms that are leading this effort, and what skill sets, what support do classroom teachers need in order to be lead teachers and work in pathways and move this powerful work forward without feeling that they have to leave the classroom to do other work, but really be able to stay in the classroom and do that. Another area that we're looking at, inter or cross, and when I was working with linked learning, I would say, to me the word linked learning says it all, because it's really about linking the different parts of education. So linking, what happens in the English class with what happens in the history class, with what happens in the math class, with what happens in the career technical education, linking what happens during the school day with what happens after school in clubs, or when you're in the workforce and an internship, having teachers talk together, work together, so that young people going through school, especially, you know, in a 6-period day, which many of our students experience, that you don't think you have 6 different bosses, that this one tells you this over here, and this one goes over here, and this one's here, and they all have the same big test on the same day, but really opportunities for teachers to work together and collaborate. And not just in the high school space, but increasingly in the college space, so opportunities for students to take college credit while they're in high school, be it community college courses taught in the high school space, be it college courses the students can take in the summer, on weekends, outside of the school day, but really making sure that students have opportunities to explore post-secondary while in high school and get that support that they need from the high school teachers. And I'm missing something.
Oh, you were on communities of Chris there.
Yeah, okay. So much, and then I lose track sometimes of where I am. Another area that we support really is looking at teachers working in teams, and just as we talked about students working in teams and learning from each other, that we really want teachers to work in communities of practice and supporting teachers and learning how to work together. So many schools still, you know, the bell rings and the teacher closes his or her door and that's it. And we don't talk to other teachers and we don't spend much time with other teachers. We work with our students all day long, are exhausted, and go home to grade papers and more papers and yet more papers. But really providing opportunities within the school day and us being able to guide and work and support teachers as they learn to work together to support their students. And then another area that we've been working to support research-based practice, and one of our colleagues, Tracy's back there, right? Yeah. Tracy is here, is working with Mission Earth in a NASA-funded project infusing NASA assets and hands-on science in schools, and really looking at enriching science programs. And Tracy may speak a little bit later if there's questions about that. I know she's here to answer those. Hands-on, powerful, engaging, rigorous science opportunities for our students. And now Annie's going to talk to you a little bit about our website, our virtual presence, and resources, free resources that we have for all of you and for all educators who are working hard day in and day out to support college and career readiness.
Giving you the speed, Trish,
Yeah.
the really fast tours, just to say what's on this site. It is one of our main ways, of course, of reaching people that we can't go to in person. The thing that drew me into Chasm, or one of the things that drew me into Chasm, really was the access to the resources that helped me figure out how to do this work. So that is one of the things that Chasm does very well. This is the site itself with the overview. In addition to your homepage and your About Us, under the services, you can see we do an awful lot of different kinds of work with districts, with teams, and under teaching and learning, we've got a curriculum database, which Tracy also gets to wave her hand on, but that provides curriculum from all, that is created for pathways. So it's not just CTE curriculum, but career technical education curriculum, but it's academic curriculum that's designed to be working in collaboration with other teachers. So it may be math curriculum that has a focus around engineering or a focus around culinary arts. It could be all different kinds of resources depending on the subject area and the field, and it's searchable. It's a searchable database that we're constantly updating, and it also has courses that are integrated academic and CTE courses with the course descriptions so that, and the where to go, the direct links so that you can go straight to all of the resources on that database. And then the second one on there is instructional resources. So the main places that you would go to find links for how to do project-based learning, a key instructional practice that's built into Pathways approach, or how to do work-based learning. All of the links to the key resources in the field are just available there with the synopsis or abstract. Then we also have guides that we've put together, whether they're internship, how to build an internship program, a mentoring program, create a program of study, all of the different components, as well as a toolbox of resources from the teachers, the lead teachers from Pathways all around the state. We've mined their resources, organized them, and set them up so that people in Pathways can go find the stuff that they need to do, the letter home to the parents about what to do with what's the tutoring program we're setting up, that they can adapt and use for their site, and a really wide variety of those. So, and of course, connections to Chasm. The master schedule guide, we do a lot of work, as Theresa was talking about, and Patricia is one of the key people doing this work in the districts, helping administrators who often haven't had much experience when they get handed the master schedule. It's not usually in administrator training programs. And we do an awful lot of work helping to get people comfortable with how do you set up master scheduling in a way that is accessible, transparent, and inclusive, involving the people who are affected by it. And that doesn't fit terribly neatly into the traditional approach to schools and bureaucracies. But this is an avenue for all of the resources and tools. So there are zillions of tools that our master scheduling gurus have put together and embedded in here that people can access, as well as the step-by-step process of how to do that. And similarly, we took on looking at how do you change when you move from the margins into the center of schooling, and you become much more the important thing that people have to figure out how to readjust around in schools. Teacher leadership for those pathway teams is a crucial thing, and developing teacher leaders becomes the responsibility of the administrators. Figuring out how do I have a teacher leadership development in place, and what do teachers need leadership skills to be able to manage to make Pathways work. So we put together a guide with, again, resources and tools and step by step the major areas of responsibility that teacher leaders need to develop. And then we also have that direct link to the California Partnership Academies, because we've maintained that relationship and that work with the California Department of Education for that particular model of Pathways. And so there are many resources there, including the Lighthouse. Interesting.
Luckily, it's near the end.
Maybe it's telling us.
Try plugging it in.
Need another,
Always go to
The
plan
bulb.
B.
need
Bulb is
another,
on.
need another quarter in the meter?
Microsoft PowerPoint has encountered a problem and needs to close. I'm sorry for inconvenience. That was the last slide on that particular set. So we could probably plug this in. You don't have one, you're in the air, huh? Yep. Okay. Well, let me just reopen Microsoft PowerPoint. Okay. Recovered file. Presentation.
So while they're doing that, I'll tap dance.
And then when you're done tap dancing, I will do the same.
Okay, I'm just gonna make an analogy. The master schedule may be kind of an abstract concept for you. So it's really the plan for how all the bodies are to move each period of every day. All the teachers, all the students, where they're to be. It's kind of like Delta Airlines figuring out how to get all the airplanes and all the passengers and all the crew where they're supposed to be every day, every hour. So that's the master schedule, and Patricia.
And I'd add one thing that's important about it too, is that the truth is that I want to know what a school really believes about students and their capacity to learn. And if I want to know what the real beliefs are in the school about all students being able to achieve at high levels, show me your master schedule. The master schedule is the MRI of your school soul. And it is. And so when we do trainings across the country and we ask we insist people come in teams. So the teams include teachers and administrators. And when we do trainings across the country and we ask how many of you were trained to do master scheduling in your credentialing programs or in your administrative credentialing programs, and almost no hands go up anywhere in the country. And it's one of the most important things, and if the person who knows how to do it in your school falls in love and runs away to Brazil over the summer, we're messed up for 3 years. So this is something we need to change, and it's the same thing around the A to G access. if we analyze around the state, rural schools don't have the same access a lot of times to A to G courses.
One year Berkeley High School had kind of a massive personnel failure. This is a big high school,
Yeah.
right next door in Berkeley. And on opening day, they didn't have a master schedule.
Yeah,
You can imagine the chaos.
4,000 some students.
3,500
Yeah.
students not knowing
Yeah.
where to go.
Sorry.
No, but all this stuff is really big, and that's what's so interesting about education. Like, you have the work you do with students in the classroom, but you also have these systems that you're in. And so how do we, whatever we do, how do we impact the whole system so that it's fair and just?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we could probably just do it from here and the rest of it without having pictures, that's okay.
Okay.
You wanna go to the,
Yeah.
Chasm field?
Well, the next part, I'm gonna ask Tracy if, as Patricia was speaking for a minute or two, we were going to talk, Chasm, there's 8 of us, and we all work together and very much believe that silos do not exist, so we don't wanna say this person does this work and only this, and this person does that and only that, and never the twain shall meet. But we do have areas in which we specialize, and one of our colleagues, Tracy Ostrom, is here this afternoon, and she has done incredible work with the NASA CAN program that I was telling you about, and also GlobeCap. So I'm going to ask her to share a few words in lieu of the slides that we don't have with us right now.
I don't need slides, I'm a teacher.
There you go.
Talk and entertain at the same time.
This really is the most math science relevant piece of
Hey,
Chasm's work right
science,
now.
be science people,
There you go.
you're in all your days. Yeah, so my background is science, both master's degree and bachelor's degree in science. And worked in the field for about 13, 14 years, and then actually taught, any Peace Corps people? No Peace Corps people. Don't. After bachelor's, I went into the Peace Corps and taught science, and had no idea how to teach. But I had a science background and studied French, and I thought I was qualified. So that kind of threw me into science. And we all have our own stories on how we get into teaching and our area of interest. And that was 13 years later, I went back to teaching after being in the private industry. But what I do is a great opportunity to melt both of my worlds together. My private industry world and working in the environmental field for all that time, but also the passion of teaching. And I think I've always had a passion of teaching even in the environmental field, because I really enjoyed having kids come out of college and giving them the opportunity to learn the science that they were doing, to learn the hands-on work that we were asking them to do. So the program that I work in now is funded by NASA. So at first I thought, oh, NASA, you're gonna be way over my head, rocket science stuff. But I would say I have learned so much from their educational group, which is across the country. NASA is focusing so much on providing resources in the classroom to teachers K through 12. And if any of you are science people and interested in NASA resources, all you gotta do is Google NASA. And you will find a plethora of resources available from NASA. But I work with high school teachers right now, and my work includes melting NASA assets, NASA resources, with what they're doing in the classroom. And I'm all about the hands-on science. Getting my kids outside was way more interesting and something they would remember than me lecturing in the classroom, although lecturing is a part of it. I get that. You know, I get that you have to give them content. But what they do with the content is much more exciting and engaging for our students. And so with this contract that we have with NASA for the next 5 years, we're going to infuse a program called GLOBE, G-L-O-B-E, Global Learning and Observation to Benefit the Environment. It's an international organization, so about 112 countries from around the world engage their science students in hands-on data collection, uploading into a database, and working with scientists, NASA scientists from NSF, etc. It is an awesome opportunity to engage students in applying that content from the classroom to a real-world situation. It is one of the most important things that I think I've learned as a teacher, and that I hope to pay it forward to the teachers that I work with. Because sometimes we get in our little world, our little classroom, and we kind of forget to take what we're engaging students in the classroom and make it relevant for them.
Can you describe a little bit more detail what the students do?
Absolutely. So it's an inquiry-based program where students come up with a research question, what if or why is, those kinds of questions that deal with different spheres: atmosphere, hydrosphere, pedosphere, which is soil, and biosphere. So they're coming up with research questions, they're collecting data based on that research question, and they're connecting their data with NASA satellite missions. So they're infusing NASA through the NASA data, they're comparing their data to a satellite data. Hopefully they're collecting that data to answer the question and hopefully come up with new questions at the end of that. It's a project-based opportunity for students, so we're not only assessing content area, but we're also assessing 21st century skills, communication skills, collaboration skills, critical thinking skills. So it's kind of a one package kind of deal with this, and it's a great opportunity to assess students in a way that's the non-traditional, oh, I teach a unit, I give a test, I teach a unit, I give a test. So I am certainly available through Chasm if anyone wants a little bit more information about the program or thinks there's a good fit with a school that they're, we work with all students in schools that are underrepresented in STEM education. You guys know what STEM is? Science, technology, engineering, math. So all of our schools are, well, they're not all academy schools, but they're all schools that we want to promote this kind of movement forward with STEM. So
Thank you for
it's probably more than you wanted, but
pulling you up from the seat in the back and sharing with everybody. Thank you, Tracy.
sure.
The next area that we want to talk to you about is that Chasm is involved in collecting evidence and evidence of practice and best practice so that we can turn around and share that back with the field. So we're currently involved in a couple of studies. One is looking at the California Partnership Academies, looking at the number of students, the type of students they enroll, the type of program they offer, and how effective or not effective this is for them, and then being able to share that with the field. We're also involved with West Ed in a huge project looking at the continuation of the Multiple Pathways Report, which was last done in 2010. And this last year, or finishing second year now, the California's State Department of Education invested $500 million.
How much?
No, how much? Tell me.
That was right.
It was 500.
500 million.
$500 million.
That's half a billion
and-
of your taxpayer dollars.
Yes, so pay attention and make sure that we all do what we're supposed to do, right? But so much was learned from the California Partnership Academies and the Linked Learning Initiative that I talked about a little bit ago, that the state, under the leadership of then Senate Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg, said, yes, this is the way that we want to go. This is what we want to do in California to make sure that all of our young people have opportunity to graduate ready to pursue their post-secondary dreams. And so money going into advancing and adding additional career pathways. And it wasn't said exactly what type of career pathways, so it could be California Partnership Academy model, it could be the linked learning approach, it could be NAF, but really making sure that all students, not just in the major urban areas, but all students in small communities and rural communities, in big cities and big high schools and small schools and standalone pathway schools had opportunity to experience college and career education in the high school space. And so the evaluation of the first year is just about done. We finished the second year, but I'm working on that. And then the last part that I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague is being here at the university. We are involved in research, and conducting research and sharing research and opportunities for you to learn from research, so that as you go out and continue your careers in the classroom, you will have opportunity to access some of the best practices and learn from those who have gone before you.
Many of these will be researchers themselves.
Okay, or researchers, and join us in this journey that we're on. So Annie will tell you about the research symposium that we're looking to put together, and hopefully we will see all of you there.
We do hire GSRs, and we actually have several openings coming in. But so look for us on the GSE newsfeed thing. So the one I was going to talk about is a research symposium that we're working on career pathways, college and career pathways that we're doing. It's a collaboration with SRI International, Jobs for the Future, the Big Learning Alliance, and WestEd, the REL, the Regional Educational Laboratory. And so those, and Cass and all of us have been trying to figure out a way to really focus in on what is the research in the field on pathways, on the different aspects of career pathways that really need to get understood better in order to inform practice. So the student outcomes, the student, what do students experience in pathways? What makes it work? And how do you know? How do you know it works, right? So how do you measure any of that? Or the whole context of teaching and learning, and what are the things that are changing in there? Employer engagement, and how do you as a society promote employers to be a part of the education experience, the education system? How do you support the employers to be able to introduce children when you can't get their children? They're young people. You have to be able to set up systems in place and structures for that to be able to happen, and incentives for people to be able to set them up in ways that work. So we're going to set up a series of 4 research symposiums about once every 6 months over the next 2 years. We're organizing the funding for that right now. If you have ideas of people who would like to see that happen, talk to us. But also, once that gets going, we'll be looking for a graduate student researcher to work with on us. That's system alignment, teaching and learning, the student experience, and capacity building, teaching, the whole teacher experience and leadership experience in that. And some of the other stuff that we are doing now is we're working on providing evidence to justify okay, so this is what we have done. I don't know why it's in this little pile of what we are doing now, but every year when they've looked at the budget, they've decided that some piece of the budget has to get put into flexibility, that the districts have to have the ability to scoop up that money and use it as they see fit in order to deal with their circumstance, because this is a local control time period. There's been a big push to make sure that local districts have the control of all of their resources. Well, that means in many cases that programs that people have built are going to lose their funds because the district may decide to do something else with those funds. So we've worked on trying to make sure that programs like the California Partnership Academies, that those CPAs or California Partnership Academies are exempt from that sweeping of funds.
I'm sorry, just
No,
to
go
clarify, are you saying that CPAs currently, California Partnership Academy funding is currently sitting in the state funds and it's not a part of LCAP, and it won't be a part of LCAP, or is that fight yet to be fought?
It's
It
been
often gets
fought,
fought
but
over and over and over again.
It's
Gentleman
been
behind
fought.
you fought that good fight.
So many times.
It's been fought. It could be fought again, but it's not being fought at the moment.
So the 491 or 51 academies will continue
They're
to be
secure.
funded.
Yep.
There won't be any additions
Who knows?
separate.
There's no current attempt to do that. There was some legislation last year, but it didn't pass.
The academies get extra funds based on how many students meet certain requirements within them in order to augment the program, the high school program. They can't supplant what's offered by the high school, but it allows the lead teachers and all of the team to be able to have time to collaborate and get compensated for it, which helps, and the students to be able to have experiences that could not otherwise be afforded. So that funding is secure, and that's partly one of the efforts that we've worked on over the years, over and over again, to maintain. One of the policy pieces that we've been working on is credentialing issues, is to be able to figure out how to get the regulations that govern who can teach what subject to change as how we are teaching changes. So how we are teaching, as in we would like to have more it's up there, more applications of academic knowledge happening in the classroom, and in pathways that you do that around the career field. But, so if you put together a course that's engineering math, right, that it really brings the kids into the math through the lens of a field that gets them to see how is this used in the world to make things. And that class is a combination of career technical education and academics. But the teacher for that class, if that class is going to get math credit, has to have a math credential. If that class is going to get funding to be able to buy the resources and materials that you need to be able to have a makerspace, you have to have a CTE credential. So the credentialing structures are set up for two separate segregated systems. And we are now in the process of figuring out how to integrate those systems, how to connect the academics with the practical applications within a career field lens. So, so that piece of trying to figure out how to get the structures that support teaching, that teaching has been built within to change in order to allow teachers to do that more easily is especially important given that there's a major shortage of teachers, especially in those fields that are high demand and high wage, like finding an engineer to work in a classroom. That's kind of hard. It's a challenge. So if you could have a physics teacher and get that physics teacher some experience in the industry field so that they could really do that job, then if you could figure out some ways to facilitate that, even though physics teachers are also hard to come by, it's at least half as hard to come by because you only need half as much. So those are some of the things that we are doing now, not all of them. So.
Okay. I think we were kind of, moving along and looking at our notes here, but we do thank you for coming today and want you to know that we're here to support you and your efforts, and looking at even, with all the work we're doing, the struggle continues in high schools in the state of California, that even though we have increasing numbers of students every year participating in pathways, approximately a third of our students are in pathways, so we still have a large and long journey, and we hope that you will join us on this journey. We have the teacher credentialing and teacher shortage overall K-12, but in particular in high school and high school CTE teachers. So encourage you to talk to your classmates and colleagues and looking at entering the profession and looking at getting not just an academic credential but a CTE credential too, so that you can teach academic and CTE courses. We are looking to look at pathways and making sure that pathway students have opportunities to go from high school straight into the CSU and UC. There is a lot of work being done right now with pathways to community college, but we want to make sure that pathways continue on to the CSU and to the UC. And we're working right here with Mia and our colleagues from the Center for Educational Partnership to look at what that might look like, or as students move from high school to community college, making sure that transfer routes are available and that students can continue on to the UC and CSUs for their bachelor degree, but also post-baccalaureate degrees, and continue in that supportive structure environment. And anything else? I was going to say, yes, we're going to turn it open to questions that you may have. And before that, thank you for your participation and all the head nodding. It was very rewarding to say, yes, I got you and I hear you. And as a teacher, I always look for that. And that bright light coming on, so thank you for sharing those with us this afternoon. And we do open it to questions that you may have for Tracy, for Patricia, for Annie, for myself.
Do you have a method for communicating or tracking your students once they get into college or into other careers beyond the high school programs?
Part of me says, wouldn't that be lovely? We do some work tracking students from high school to the college space, and that's an area really in this research and the money that former Daryl Steinberg put forward, really looking at monitoring and tracking, and not tracking the way we've been talking about tracking all afternoon, but really following students into post-secondary and where they go. There is some work in some places looking at working with the WIOA Act and workforce investment boards on following young people to career and earnings those first couple of years, but that's very, very preliminary in the early stages and probably still a decade in the making, but a lot of interest in doing that. Somebody was talking a couple weeks ago, hearing about maybe tracking students through DMV and driver's licenses because of the challenges, and understandably, being teachers and young people, we want to protect their confidentiality and their opportunities, so not wanting to give too much information. But we do want to see, if we work so hard in the high school space, what impact did this have in post-secondary, and what impact did this have young people as they enter careers. And right now, the best that we can do really is looking at anecdotal data where students come back and say, oh, I'm so glad I had this program. I did so well, and I knew so many people that dropped out and I didn't, and I entered this career. So that's the best information that we have available at this point.
There have been some longitudinal studies, but as a routine matter, no.
There is a program out there, I can't remember the name of it.
CalPass Plus.
Is that dead?
No. But they have to work around the absence of an individual identifier that can track from secondary into post-secondary. There isn't any. Other states use the Social Security number at K-12, but California does not. So it's not possible easily to match post-secondary information with secondary information at K-12. CalPass Plus is a nonprofit that has an elaborate workaround for that. So they'll contract with districts to make those matches where they can.
And a lot of interest in doing that. It's just how to work through all the legislation, and then can't expect that to happen. You got a question?
Yeah, just for clarification, the direct support that you all offer is restricted to California public schools? Or
No, it's not just California, and it's primarily public schools, but we've also worked with, one charter school group a couple of years ago that is statewide for students who've dropped out before that they're bringing back in. So, it's been a mix always.
And some of the work that we do is funded by funding or grants that we get, so we're able to provide services and support at no charge. And then some of the work that we do is fee for service, so paid by the organizations, and then we come in and support. Question? Comments?
comment.
Uh-huh.
I'm so glad that something like this exists. So I'm originally from Texas by way of North Carolina. So I've been in North Carolina have been in North Carolina for the last 13 years, but did all of my education thus far primarily in Texas. And so, just, I would say within the last year, I've had this, thought in my head of what if something exactly like college career academies existed. I wonder. And so as you were going through all of the things that I'm like, oh, we need this, we need this, we need this, I'm like, yes, it has that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that something like this exists. I'm glad that Chasm is a resource to encourage even more of these efforts in schools. So I cannot exude enough how much I appreciate and just overjoyed that this even exists.
Well, thank you very much. This made my day.
And
My week.
And there are all kinds of opportunities to work with us. I mean, we are in a lot of contexts in the local area, and we are trying to higher up in the next while.
What about school visits for anybody? I'm just,
Yeah.
maybe this is, it's not all that easy to arrange school visits, but if anybody is really curious to see what one of these efforts looks like on the ground,
That would be easy to
that
do.
could probably be
You're right.
arranged, right?
That could
Yeah,
be-
if you signed in with Lloyd, we can make that happen and get information out.
Yeah, or contact
Definitely.
us through the website,
Right.
or just talk to.
Yep, we'll be here. We had a lovely meeting this morning with our new dean, the new dean of the Graduate School of Education, and opportunities for us to further connect with some of the work that's taking place here in the Graduate School of Education. And we walked out of that meeting very excited, thinking that there will be even more opportunities, kind of what you were referring to embed this work in so that more students going through teacher preparation programs or leadership programs have opportunities to learn about what is happening in high schools today and the support that's available for high schools. Because as you can imagine, going from a system that for 60, 70, 80 years has been working on and training, preparing young people for college or for career, and then to say, when I was a high school principal, I would say, no, we have to turn this whole thing, everything that we do, and say inside, outside, upside, downside is a huge task and a huge, incredibly heavy amount of work to do and can't be done alone. So as you're out there in the schools doing that, know that the support is here available on our website and through the Graduate School of Education to help you. And as you enter the profession or continue in the profession, know that there are resources that are available to help you do
And
this.
since many of you are researchers, I should point out that the program that Tracy is part of was originally funded, the first phase of it was funded by NSF. And even with only about 300 students in 6 different schools, there were statistically significant gains in student participation in higher level math and science classes and in their grades. So some of these efforts are really paying off, and I know if you want to do some research on these kinds of settings, that would be very welcome.
That would be wonderful. Or join us in some of the research that we're working on. We have a couple of exciting opportunities we hope will come to fruition. Well, thank you. Just looking at the clock, and it is pretty much our time to close this afternoon and open for informal conversation. So thank you all for coming this afternoon and joining us for the first of many. Do you want to make an announcement about upcoming colloquiums or next steps?
Those will be posted. I just want to thank you for handling the technical problems so smoothly.
Our
It
pleasure.
happens.
So thank you all.